Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Wired for Success podcast with my colleague Steve Costello and myself, Patience Modevi. And today we are talking again to parents and to teenagers about what it is to build bridges and not barriers. When you think about bridges and barriers, what do you think about? What comes up in your mind right now? I'm sure you're thinking, where are they going with this today? Well, today we are talking about what we can do, what you can do as parents to kind of create more passage for you and your teenagers to be able to communicate clearly, but also to be able to build a better future. So, Steve, tell us a little bit more about it.
Sure. It's good to see you outdoors, Patience, for a change. That's really nice. Um, I think if I went outdoors to do this today, I would be a pile of melted Steve on the floor, because it's a bit hot.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, um, just before I start, a lot of the things we're going to talk about today relate to, as many things do, relate to communication. So if there's any parents out there who are struggling to communicate with their teen, get in touch with Patience and/or I, and we'll help you out, point you in the right direction, and so on. So don't hesitate. Leave a comment, send a direct message, do whatever to get in touch with us. I'll say that again probably a little bit later. So if you think about it, it's true that quite often we build barriers when really what we need to be doing is building bridges. And that's especially true, although it is true in other places, but it's especially true in the most important relationships in our life. So we're talking about the relationships here between parents and adolescents. Quite often, barriers start to build quite subtly. It doesn't suddenly happen. It can, but it doesn't usually happen. And it could start with a slammed door, bang, or a sarcastic comment from parent or teen. So let's say there's one from a teen. You never listen to me. And they drop it like a bomb. No, it's not dropped gently, it goes like a bomb and bang. You never listen to me. And then what happens? Silence moves in. And it isn't a peaceful silence. It's a kind of absent silence. It's uncomfortable. It makes us all cringe a little bit. So we don't want to be going down that road very often, if at all. And the thing is, what we forget sometimes is that adolescents are not usually trying to push us away. They're trying to push out and break out into the world that they see that they want to be a part of. And in some way, they're kind of wired for exploring, they're wired for growth, they're wired to develop their identities. And quite often to do that, they need to question. They need to question parents, other places where authority seems to reign over. They need to question the rules. They need to break the rules as well sometimes, and that's a bit scary. And sometimes it feels as though they're breaking our heart because all we want to do as parents is our absolute best for them. And then there's one of my favorite words coming up. There's a paradox. The more they push for independence, the more they actually need connection.
Yeah.
Just have a think about that for a minute. And the more that we as parents respond with control, the more that the teens are going to reinforce disconnection. So if we're control, we end up with a disconnection going on. And that's the barrier. When we the barrier comes because there's some disconnection. So sometimes as parents, maybe we misunderstand their resistance and interpret it as rebellion.
Yeah.
When really what they're doing is looking for autonomy, but we've misread it. And sometimes as well, and I'm guilty of this, I know I've done this in the past, we respond to emotional excuse me, we respond to emotional outbursts with logic. And we forget that teens and a lot of adults as well, they feel first and they think in a minute or a bit later.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit crazy sometimes. And sometimes as well, we ask the wrong question. What's wrong with you? Instead of, hey, what's going on with you today? So phrasing a question in a slightly different, more gentle way can get a massively different result. So every time we kind of become mistuned or out of line, whatever you want to call it, it's like a brick in the wall. And over a longer
Yeah.
period of time, another brick, another brick, another brick. And suddenly the wall gets really difficult to climb, not just for the teams, but for the
Yeah.
parents as well. So that becomes a huge barrier. So where are you with this, Patience?
I think what you said is totally right. Um, and even to add another perspective to this is, as a parent, if you've been lacking in having boundaries with your teenagers, with your children until they become teenagers, and then when they become teenagers, you then want to put the boundary in, there's going to be a clash. This is going to be a big barrier. And I see all this happening often and often, where parents are of like leaving children to behave in a certain way. And all of a sudden, because they can feel like they also are kind of like um, their territory is kind of taken also, they want to now tell the children or tell the teenagers, well, you need to give me space. I think it works in both ways. But at the end of the day, the message needs to be clear and it needs to be the same all throughout. If you want to evolve into something else, or if you want to change into something else, you need to bring new boundaries. And often that's where you see everything is blurred. So to give you a specific example, I remember where I was with I was talking to a mom, and this mom was saying that her children basically never gave her any space. So everywhere she was going, she had to go with them. And what happened is that in this mom's life, she took the role of the dad and the mom, even though the dad was still in the picture. And by doing that, what it created is that the children merged with the mom and they merge as one. So now they've grown up, they have even more needs. They want more things. They want to be going everywhere with her. And she's like, hold on, I need a bit of peace. You need to back away. But you haven't put those boundaries in place in the first place. So for them, it's like a shock. It's like, hold on, what are you talking about now? I've always been able to follow you wherever you go. Which kind of space are you looking for now? So when we're talking about bridges over barriers, we're talking in both ways as well. So you have to think of it like, okay, is there boundaries? And maybe you are crossing as a parent, you are crossing boundaries with your teenagers. That's something maybe to ask yourself.
Yeah, brilliant point. It's interesting that so sometimes boundaries can be something that are difficult and challenging, but sometimes they're there to protect us, protect our well-being and our interests. So we've got to bear that in mind. And I did some brainstorming earlier about bridges, so what do bridges look like between, let's say, we're talking about parents and teens. So one of the foundations for a bridge is that we need to be able to listen without solving. And that's because quite often, remember, adolescents are learning, they're developing, they're growing. They don't always want answers. In
Yeah.
a way, they want to kind of witness. That sounds like a strange word. They want to witness to what they're thinking, what they're saying, what they're doing. They want to be heard. It doesn't matter in a way that they're right or wrong, but they need to be heard because from being heard, there's an opportunity to learn, to grow, to develop, and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And another thing to build a bridge is that as parents, we need to validate what they're doing,
Mm.
but we don't need to agree. That's crucial. So, for example, we don't have to say, yes, you're right. But what we do need to say is something like, yeah, I understand. I get why this feels big to you. So we need to show them that we're listening, we're showing some empathy, and we're on their side. So we're not asking any or making any closed statements that are going to upset and cause another barrier. And
Yeah.
we need to be as well. And this is difficult for some parents that I've worked with. I know this. It's occasionally been difficult for me as well. We need to be curious, not
Mm.
correct. I'm the parent, I'm right. My granddad, one of my granddads in particular, was very much, I'm the boss, I'm right, you're not,
Yes.
and it was so frustrating. But so
But
it's worth
I think it's such a way. I feel like when this happens, because this can happen often, but when this happens, I think it's great to do a little bit of like the trial version, So the against and the for, basically, you know, and really look at all again. I'm going to use that word, but perspective of everyone and understanding that, okay, we might not have the same opinion, but I can understand what you want to explain to me right now.
yeah,
Totally
brilliant.
agree, Steve.
So as I said a few minutes ago, we've got to be careful with our questions and our comments. We've got to think them through. So one of the worst things that I think can be said is, you should have known better. That is so unhelpful. That is a huge barrier. But if we say something on the lines of, help me to understand what happened to our team,
Mm,
that opens the door for a conversation, and it's a bridge. It's a great bridge. So we need to be very careful about the sort of questions we ask. Again, as I said at the beginning of this, if you find it's difficult to ask those questions, the right questions, or if you're struggling to communicate, let us know. Talk to us, and we can support you and help you out. The whole thing, though, is that everything we've said today isn't about being the perfect parent. I challenge anybody to
um,
say, look at me, I'm the perfect parent, because I don't
yeah,
think such a being exists. We're human beings at the end of the day. But what it is important to be is a consistent parent. Teens need some consistency. It might not look like it on the surface, but they do need some consistency.
yeah,
And we need to help them to build things like emotional safety. It is so crucial. But yet, we've got to recognize that sometimes the conversations are quite difficult. It can
yeah.
be quite a big challenge. So,
And
patience.
I think one more thing I want to add is like sometimes I want to say you do have to take the blame as a parent. Because really and truly, except from you, who do they have to blame? So sometimes we have to accept that they're gonna be they're gonna want to vent and to be like, well, um this is how I feel, and you're not listening, and you never listening, and this and that, and they'll go on and on. But the idea is that also communication is also through presence. It's also through being there and
Yeah,
listening, like he was saying earlier. It's not just about saying exactly the right things at the right moment, but it's about showing that they matter, and what they're saying is worth taking the time listening to.
yeah, yeah. I think this is perhaps a message for parents, although it's useful for adolescents as well. In all difficult moments, there is a choice. We can make
Yeah,
a choice. So we can build walls as parents to protect our position, the position that we see we are in as a parent. Or we can build bridges because bridges
Yeah.
help us to protect the relationship and grow and develop and so on. It's not about being nice all of the time. We can't
That's
always,
right.
sometimes it's not appropriate, you know. So how are we doing? I think we need to finish, don't we? We don't have all day, and we don't want
Yes,
to keep all day either.
you do. I think as we said already, if you are going through a season where you can find difficulties to communicate with your teenagers, where you feel like you need some support, some guidance, just come and connect with us. It's really easy to connect with us. You can do that via our Facebook group, on YouTube. You can also contact us via DM or as a message, and also you can email us. So this we have all the channels for you to get in touch with us and to ask for support, and we'll be there to answer.
Brilliant. Thank you, everybody. Don't forget, get in touch when you need to, when
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.